Hello and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for a Hump Day, Wednesday, August the 27th, 2025, the 239th day of the year, and National Banana Lovers Day. Who doesn't love a good banana? America alone consumes about 6.5 billion pounds of bananas a year, making it the most popular fruit in the country. Today also happens to be the annual tomato throwing festival in Spain, if you're still on summer travel in Europe, perhaps. In Washington, D.C., where crime is down, have you heard? President Trump and Vice President Vance are having lunch at the White House after a couple of very busy days at the White House, including yesterday's cabinet meeting, the 7th already of President Trump's second term.
And we've had a lot of great decisions, and we've all made some great decisions sitting around this table. I want to thank Scott. Unbelievable what's happening financially with you and Howard. And Vice President's involved in everything, and he's been great. And Marco has been really, I think you're born for this job. I don't think you should ever run for another office. I don't think you should, really. You're so good at this. He is so good. And everybody likes him, everybody likes him. But everybody, much more importantly than like, I think you would say, is respect. They respect Marco. They respect all the people around the table. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to go around the table. You seem to like it. Your audience seems to like it based on ratings. And I want to mention, about crime, because we have a young lady here, Iris, of Epoch Times. You're Iris, aren't you, huh? And I heard you were very savagely mugged in the city, and you're not going to let that happen under this administration. That was last year. And would you like to mention what happened?
Of course. So first of all, thank you, Mr. President.
Do you want to listen to this?
For having me here to share my story to the room and to the broader public. My name is Iris Tao. I'm a White House correspondent for NTD, the sister media of the Epoch Times. So more than 2 years ago, it was a Saturday morning in broad daylight. I was on my way to work, and a young man with a black ski mask pointed a gun at my face and threatened me to hand over my phone, my wallet, my laptop, and everything else. And when I refused, he used the butt of his handgun to strike me across the face, in the cheek, or what some people call pistol whip me, before running away. And that has deeply traumatized myself and my family. Ever since, I've never dared to walk in the street of D.C. at night, ever. And my family was extremely worried. So, Mr. President, thank you so much for what you're doing right now.
Thank you for being honest.
That is a journalist named Iris Tao, the White House correspondent for international news agency NTD.
So you had a gun pointed at your head, and you probably figured that he's going to pull the trigger, because these are animals that don't know what the hell. They couldn't care less. The pulling the trigger to him is a very minor event, and I'm sure he's done it before. So how did you? And you did refuse to give it, which would probably, maybe somebody would say that was not the right decision, right? But you refused, but I understand that. So, and then he hit you real hard.
Yes.
It's really amazing that you weren't shot, though.
I'm very blessed, and that's why having this opportunity to stand here to share my story today. One, I'm very grateful for God for allowing me to still survive to this day, but also to Mr. President. Thank you for now making D.C. safer.
Thank you very much.
For us, for our families, for my parents, on my behalf of my parents, and now my baby on the way. Thank you so much.
And there are other reporters and journalists, good people, and you don't have to say it, but that have also been attacked violently. And not violently, too, pretty badly. But, and I bet you see a big difference in the streets right now. And this is only 12 days, but people are telling me they're going out to dinner now. They haven't, I told the story of my friend, but I have a lot of friends that are going out to dinner all the time now in D.C., and they weren't doing it 12 days ago.
President Trump, in yesterday's cabinet meeting, had a White House correspondent brave enough to tell her story of being attacked and say, "I feel much safer. I see the difference. And thank you, Mr. President." On yesterday's Newsmax Daily, I said that I wasn't going to talk about all this bickering between Illinois Governor J.D. Pritzker and Chicago's mayor pushing back against federal troops possibly coming to Chicago. But it was the focus of several shows, including Rob Schmitt tonight.
Rod Blagojevich is the former Democrat governor of Illinois, and he joins us now, and it's good to have you back on. The mayor and the governor look so ridiculous, trying so hard to stop this when you got 6 people killed on the South Side just this past weekend, don't they?
Well, worse than ridiculous. They look hypocritical, and they look uncaring, and they look grossly incompetent, almost wickedly incompetent. In Chicago this year, in the first 233 days, 254 people have been murdered. And in 80% of the cases, the people who've been murdered are black people in the neighborhoods that Governor Pritzker is far removed from, and big, fancy, rich white liberals don't live in. They are hypocrites, and there's a touch of racism to this, Rob, because for the Democrats in Chicago, the Democrats in Illinois, this new Democratic Party, Black Lives Matter only for votes. But when it comes to doing something to actually make their neighborhoods safer, they turn down the offer, and they do it in a repugnant, really unflattering way. Why would Governor Pritzker not accept President Trump's help to save lives? And there is no question about it. If there was a presence of the National Guard or more police officers, there would be less crime and less murders. We have 12,000 police officers in the city of Chicago, over 100,000 gangbangers. So when Mayor Johnson says, I won't answer the question on whether or not we should get 5,000 more cops, here's another example of the ridiculous leadership we have in our city and in our state.
It's such a toxic ideology that they all share. It's so sad what's happened to what used to be a pretty moderate, normal Democrat Party has just been captured by this ridiculous ideology. And the craziest thing about it is we found out that Pritzker actually did call up the National Guard, 250 National Guard troops to protect the DNC in Chicago last summer. So they'll do it to protect their white liberal donors, but to save the black kids that are piling up on the streets on the south side of Chicago, that's where they draw the line.
That's where they draw the line. And even worse than doing it the way they're doing it is they're being pushed by these crazy left-wing lunatic socialist communists who've now become sort of like the mainstream of the Democratic Party. And these billionaires like Pritzker, who basically twice spent something like $350 million to be elected governor, and Johnson, who is the vehicle of the teachers' unions, they're afraid to say anything that even is close to common sense for fear that they're going to offend these crazy people in their party. This is not leadership. Pritzker and this guy Johnson are weak mayors, weak governor, and because they're so weak, people are dying in our city. And in 8 out of 10 cases, the people that are dying are black people. Here again, getting mistreated by the political leadership in our city and our state.
That is former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich, a Democrat who, yes, was pardoned of corruption-related charges by President Trump. National Report spoke with someone who not only represents the black community of Chicago, as Blagojevich was saying, but whose own family has been greatly impacted by violent crime.
P. Ray, you live in Chicago. You know about, you've seen crime in this area. I think we've had discussions about this prior. Talk to us about what other Chicago residents, surrounding area residents really feel. What do they need? What do they want?
Well, again, thank you for having me this morning. And hello to the former superintendent. It's interesting that he mentioned 2014 because in that year, my first cousin, Abraham Cooper, was murdered on the west side of Chicago, and it put my entire family into a tailspin. We did not get any justice from the Chicago Police Department. We didn't get any justice through the Cook County courts, but President Trump brought Operation Legend, which was a federal initiative, to the city of Chicago to help with bring federal officials to dismantle criminal organizations and solve cold cases. When they came to Chicago, not only was Abraham's murder solved, but my cousin who was murdered in 2009, his murder was on the indictment, and my cousin who was murdered in 2003, his murder was on that indictment with 17 other people. And according to the indictment, the Chicago Police Department was well aware that these terrorists were killing these people on the west side of Chicago. So because we cannot find justice through the Cook County courts, because we cannot find justice through the Chicago Police Department, it's time for us to go get the help. The president was referring to me and people like me who have been on cable TV for the past 2 years begging for help. We don't want troops. We don't want a curfew. We want indictments. For every one troop he sends, we want 2 prosecutors to come in and prosecute the people who have manipulated and corrupted our legislation in order to give us this situation. We're dealing with the cartel here. Everybody acts like that's not happening.
That's P. Ray Easley, founder of Chicago Red on Newsmax. 3 of her cousins have been killed on the streets of Chicago in the past 20 years or so. They don't want troops. They don't want curfews. They want indictments. According to Attorney General Pam Bondi and Judge Jeanine, more than 1,000 people have been arrested in D.C. since the law enforcement surge began back on August 11th. And let's switch gears a bit to the FBI raid on the home of former National Security Advisor John Bolton. 2 judges have agreed with the government that there was probable cause to search his home and his office. That doesn't mean that he committed a crime. That doesn't mean that he'll be charged with anything. But it does mean there was probable cause to seize the items. And we go to Greg Kelly reports.
Oh boy, how sweet it is. Yes, indeed. How sweet it is to be back. I was on vacation. I think I needed it, and I also think I needed to come back. I did keep my eye on events here in America. I was overseas. I'll tell you about it later. When I found out that John Bolton was in trouble, I did a little dance, all right? This guy so deserves it. This looks like it's related to the misuse of classified information and who knows what else, but accountability has been needed for John Bolton for a long time. He was the principal intellectual architect behind the Iraq War fiasco. Weapons of mass destruction, convincing Bush and the rest to go in, pointless war. He never apologized. So many people, blood on their hands, literally, in my opinion. And he still walks around like he's some sort of a genius. And he talks about regime change. He actually has the audacity to talk about the use of force when he doesn't know anything about it. He really should have left government for good after Iraq. But he got himself into the Trump administration. It might have been a stroke of genius after all what President Trump did with this guy. Now that he's out, well, for a while there, he thought he was in the clear and went around trashing Trump every chance he got.
I think he has a fascination with authoritarian leaders generally. I think Trump would like to be a big guy, but I don't think he's smart enough to be a dictator.
So is Trump, what's the term, an idiot?
Well, I think Rex Tillerson had the iconic 2-word description of Trump. The first word I won't repeat even on your show, the second of which was moron.
Okay, I'll throw it in there.
That's pretty much on point. That's
yes,
right.
A moron.
Right.
Can a moron still be a useful idiot?
I think the answer to that's yes, and I think Vladimir Putin understands it.
Just a disgraceful performance that undermined national security. This guy shooting his mouth off. It's a free country. You can do these things, I guess. Yeah, you can. But it's just very rich coming from somebody like him. The arrogance and the mistakes, the catastrophes that follow him all around. And somehow he thinks he's the solution to all of America's woes.
I think it's our job to fix the Republican Party from the damage that Trump has done.
And I think he said here, and how do we do that? President Bolton?
If I do get in, it will be to win the nomination, not simply to prove a point. That's a serious, difficult decision to make, and I'm going to consider it in a prudent fashion.
Prudent fashion. Pal, you live in America, all right? No chance whatsoever. But this is what he did. He deluded himself and others about his presidential future and weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and hated President Trump so much that he wrote a book that I think they'll be reading in his trial. The contempt that he has for President Trump, it's deeply personal. And this book came out, in June of 2020. What was happening then? General election. Joe Biden was the Democrat nominee. He wrote a book to help Joe Biden and hurt Donald Trump, and he calls himself a conservative. Well, what kind of conservative would support a person who supports this, the monsters in the classrooms with our children, or would support a president who was about to lose in Afghanistan? This is what happened because, well, John Bolton helped the other side. You can make the case that he's responsible in part for what happened in Afghanistan. How about that? The book should not have been written because it's jam-packed with classified stuff. And it's, you know who's saying that? This guy, a federal judge by the name of Royce Lamberth. John Bolton accepted a role as National Security Advisor in April of 2018. Check me out on the timeline here, all right? Okay, he goes through the basic facts first. Next, if you don't mind, he was entrusted with countless national secrets and privy to sensitive dealings. Yeah, it's a big job. Keep going. He left his position September 10th, 2019. And then what happened? Within 2 months, Bolton had secured a book deal with Simon & Schuster. Okay, and in December of 2019, Bolton submitted a draft manuscript, 500 pages long, to the National Security Council for publication review. They got to look to make sure there's nothing secret in there. Bolton likely published classified materials. The government is likely to succeed on the merits. Bolton may indeed have caused the country irreparable harm. Wow. Next, please. Bolton has gambled with the national security of the United States. He has exposed himself, his country to harm, and himself to civil and potentially criminal liability. This is bad stuff, man.
Greg Kelly is the host of Greg Kelly Reports, 9 p.m. Eastern. Again, he's reading statements about John Bolton and about his book from a federal judge, Judge Royce Lamberth. Not only did the FBI seize boxes of documents and paperwork from Bolton's home and office, they also seized electronics and other things that now could take months to go through. So be prepared. We may not know anything for months. And the Trump administration placed more than a dozen FEMA workers on leave yesterday after they signed an open letter of dissent about the agency's leadership and sent it to Congress and other officials on Monday. By Tuesday night, little more than 24 hours, FEMA's Office of the Administrator had sent several people letters informing them that effective immediately, they were on administrative leave, which means they do still get paid and they still get their benefits. The president also announced that he's doubling the tariffs on imports from India from 25 to 50% in an effort to punish the country for still buying Russian oil. NATO Ambassador Matthew Whitaker spoke with Bianca De La Garza on Newsline about getting Russian President Putin and Ukrainian President Zelensky to the table.
We're closing in on that 2-week mark. President Trump has said he'll know what to do. We know sanctions are still a possibility. As you look at, the next few days as we come to that, President Trump, for the first time, many say yesterday, Ambassador, really dismissed the fact that the meeting is going to happen and really softened his stance on the possibility of it.
Well, first of all, President Trump holds all the cards, and he, he's put tariffs, secondary sanctions on India, and he could do that with other countries that are buying Russian oil. He has obviously he had meetings on Friday and Monday of last week to try to create the conditions so that these two sides could talk. They're exchanging prisoners. They're having some communications at lower levels, but they're going to have to both want to make a deal. And, it appears that Russia continues to kind of want more than Ukraine will agree to. But at the same time, there are conversations going on. And it's while I think it's frustrating that we're so close, yet so far, I think there is still the opportunity to have good communications and potentially a summit between these two leaders to resolve this war. The killing needs to end. The bloodshed needs to end. It is a meat grinder. Thousands of soldiers are dying every day, plus civilians in major cities in Ukraine. And, it's only a matter of time before this gets resolved, then we might as well resolve it sooner than later.
NATO Ambassador Matthew Whitaker on Newsline. That's at noon with Bianca De La Garza. On Wall Street, markets opened mixed this morning. The Dow and the S&P were up slightly. The NASDAQ was down slightly ahead of earnings from AI giant NVIDIA. I've been telling you all week that this is the big happening of the week. The earnings will be released after the closing bell this afternoon. As NVIDIA goes, likely will the market go tomorrow. And Kroger, the country's largest supermarket chain behind Walmart, said it will lay off 1,000 corporate workers. Kroger's corporate headquarters is in Cincinnati, Ohio. Bitcoin and most other major cryptocurrencies are higher this morning. Bitcoin up about $600, pushing 112,000. Ethereum up $28 at 4,600 and change. XRP is actually down a penny at 302. So keep up with all of today's news and breaking developments on Newsmax, N2 and at Newsmax.com, and make sure you're streaming on Newsmax Plus so you get all of your favorite shows, all of your favorite hosts, and all the expert analysis, like NATO Ambassador Matthew Whitaker, Senior Judicial Analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano, Senator Rick Santorum, Foreign Policy Expert Fred Fleitz, Professor Dershowitz, Retired Brigadier General Blaine Holt, Hogan Gidley, and many others. I'm Tony Marino. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, eat a banana, and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.